We are recording with Mr. John Moody on Thursday, November 30th, 2023 at 10:06 a.m. Eastern time. And we were just talking about yesterday. It's been a little over 12 hours since Henry Kissinger passed, at 100 years old, which is wild. So I normally don't do this. I normally don't pull up the bio to read. I kind of just wing it, but every once in a while I do because it's cool. But yeah, former executive vice president, executive editor for Fox News, former Rome bureau chief for Time Magazine, the author of 4 books, including Pope John Paul II biography, and talking about Taiwan today. But before that, I did want to pull up your book. So it's right up my alley, and I wanted to read the description, and I would absolutely love to have you on. And the link to the book's in the description. But I'm gonna read the description right now because anyone that listens to the show knows how like in line this. I mean, I've had on Brigadier General Robert Spalding, who wrote Stealth War. I've had on a bunch of former, CIA ground branch guys all talking about the China threat. So in Just Another Country, Moody brings an emotionally shattering, politically infuriating conclusion to his fact-based trilogy of China's relentless attempts to destroy the United States, be it through a deadly virus and an endless wave of illegal immigrants, shipments of fentanyl, or artificial intelligence. Worst of all, Chinese AI bots have acquired emotions and are now turning humans into their slaves. We're absolutely going to do an episode on that because that sounds so cool, and I'm going to grab it. But I will stop blabbering, as you can tell that's my MO. Mr. Moody, would you please introduce yourself?
Well, thanks very much for the introduction and for the synopsis of the book. Um, I'm very pleased to be here. I've This last book, Just Another Country, was the final part of the trilogy on China that I've written about. Started in 2020 when I realized that Americans were not being told why this virus that we're all supposed to call COVID took place and what we can do about it. It was immediately squashed by the Chinese Communist Party, saying, "Hey, don't look at us. There's nothing to see here, folks. Keep moving on." And since China more or less controls the World Health Organization, which is a UN agency, but nonetheless deeply in China's debt, they said, well, we're not going to call this the Wuhan flu, and we're not going to call it the Chinese virus. We're going to call it COVID. And everybody looked at one another and said, "What the heck is COVID?" And it was just a name that they made up. I mean, it's an anagram. Um, and the next piece of serious advice was stay away from each other. Don't go anywhere near each other, which is great for business. When you're trying to run a business, your employees just don't come into work anymore, and you're supposed to pay them. And then the next piece of advice was wear a mask. For goodness sake, wear one of those blue masks. Coincidentally, I'm sure it's just a coincidence, all those masks were made in China. So here's a good business model. Create a deadly virus, allow it to spread around the world, and then offer the product that you say will protect people from the virus that you created. I think it's a good business plan. I think Jack Welch would be very much in favor of that.
And I think it's as General Spalding says, you have to respect your enemy. They are waging a beautiful war. That doesn't mean, obviously, with my obnoxiously huge American flag behind me for 1380 episodes, you can tell which side I'm on. But man, you got to respect the game. You got to respect that they understand that they're not going. Shiro Ishii from Unit 731, Japan's bioweapons like program, and at the end of World War II, I think his quote was, he's a doctor, is America is a machine society. They can produce tanks, they can produce ships, they can produce planes faster, more numerous than anyone else. However, it takes 18 years to grow a soldier. And that's why they wanted to produce bioweapons. Now, what they did
Yeah,
was heinous. But man, you got if you're down and you don't have a good, I don't know how to fight, but if UFC fighter comes at me, I don't know, I'm gonna bite him. It's what I have. And so in that sense, you have to respect China's move, right?
well, I think that's true. The witticism that you gave about being, America can produce more tanks, more this, more that than anybody is out of date.
Oh
We
no,
can't
it's out of
anymore.
date now. Yeah, no, correct.
Yeah, and China has overtaken us. They can produce things faster, cheaper, also crappier than anybody else in the world. But we don't seem to care anymore because it's 25 cents cheaper to buy a sponge made by a slave in China, in a prison camp, or even not to in any way say that you're wrong to have that flag behind you, but make sure you know where it was made.
Oh yeah. Oh yeah.
There are slave camps in Xinjiang province in the southwest of China, where Uyghurs, as
Uyghur
I'm sure you
Muslims.
know, is the Muslim minority of China, have been put on assembly lines, no pay, no days off, no health care plan, beaten viciously, had their organs harvested for transplant for use in sales camp, these American flags. So it just takes the glory out of old glory when you think about that. And yet we're allowing them to be imported. We're selling them. They're cheaper than U.S. made flags. There's a great flag company in Pittsburgh, Pennsylvania, that I've always gone to whenever I needed an American flag, which is often. And it's just a minor act of patriotism that can make you feel a whole lot better about that wonderful symbol behind you.
It is beautiful, and I did make sure I actually bought that almost 3 years before I started the podcast. I did make sure it was made in the United States because I was like, we're not doing that. But I mean, that's what's the flag company in Pittsburgh? Do you know by any chance? I guess I'll look it up later. Um, but it's not only that. I mean, what about our iPhones, right? I mean, I can say, "Ha, I got my American made American flag." But what about your iPhone? Where was that made? Where did Apple outsource that to? They outsourced it to Foxconn, where they put nets around it because it prevents you from committing suicide. I mean, that's some, and there's such an aversion in my generation. I was born in 1990. There's such an aversion. It's so hip to hate America, and it probably hasn't. I don't think so. It hasn't been this way since the 60s, and man, it's not an exaggeration to look at China and be like, dude, that's a coming evil empire. Like what they're doing is evil. Harvesting. I've had
China
on.
is,
Sorry, go on.
yeah, yeah. No, I think you're right. You're right. It is hip to hate America. I think that noxious idea gained ground over the past 20 or 30 years.
Mhm.
I believe that the first, I've talked about this before. I think that the hipness to saying I hate America may have begun with the election of George W. Bush in 2000, because that election was so heavily disputed and so hatefully
Mm,
disputed. And no matter what President Bush tried to do, he was never going to be relieved of the stigma of a disputed election.
mm,
And so when we talk about other elections that have created dissent and in many ways dislike of America, we have to go back and look at our history. Our history is one of great ideas. America is the greatest experiment in freedom that history has ever known, and yet we are now raising and encouraging a new generation, younger than me and probably younger than you. I don't know for sure, that has been educated to believe that America is a lousy place and that we should really be doing everything we can to tear down America because, by God, it's our right as citizens. Actually, it's not. And I in many of these interviews, I've gone back and referenced the most famous line of JFK's inauguration speech: "Ask not what your country can do for you, ask what you can do for your country." It's such a melodic and beautiful thought and such great advice to an entire nation. And yet it's sort of become a punchline,
mm.
because the current mood in America is gimme, gimme, gimme. Now I've got it. Now give me more. And I despair of what a lot of young citizens and non-citizens who are here but are going to stay anyway, think about the principles of the United States and about its future.
And for anybody listening, we are having a choppy connection, which is, Zoom is owned by China, so I mean, who knows? But as soon as we start talking about organ harvesting, it gets choppy. But no, it is. I mean, the only hope I have in terms of just kind of like loose surface level hope, I do have hope deeper than that, is that a lot of people will, it used to be nose piercings and tattoos were edgy and hip. Now everyone has them. If you want to be edgy and hip now, get married, have kids, and go to church. Like that is punk rock now. Like it's cool to be like, I'm 19 genders, my hair's neon pink, I identify as a communist witch, and I hate America. I mean, for the number of people that hopefully are just doing it to be edgy, I can only hope that one day they'll want to do the next thing. They'll want the leather jacket with the spikes, but that equivalent will be not hating the United States. But to me, it always comes back to the gradient. I was a biology major in college. I got into medical school. It's probably my proudest achievement to date. Got into pharmacy school. But one thing is always just a cell, right? You got a cell, you got a gradient. If you have saltier fluid outside of the cell, it's gonna flow inwards. If you have saltier fluid inside of the cell, it's just a gradient. It's water seeking its level. I always look at which way people come illegally. Which way do they when the walls fall, where do they run to? I have friends that immigrated here from Eastern Europe, from Kosovo, from Bulgaria. Where do they come from? And they always come here and they always say, you don't know what you have. And it's always that case. Edward Teller, the inventor of the hydrogen bomb, came here and he wanted to build the biggest bomb ever because he said, Americans, you don't know what you have. You don't know what communism really is. You think you hate it, but you don't hate it nearly as much as you should. And I do understand the dangers of just beating the war drums and jingoism. I get all those threats. I've read about Smedley Butler. I understand it, but man, it's looking kind of dire. And so as not to completely sidetrack this, I completely forgot that people are probably tuning into the title and they're like, you're talking about Taiwan. Your thoughts on the idea, at least, that Xi is telling Biden that we're gonna reunify with Taiwan peacefully. What is that?
It's baloney. I don't know how to say that in Chinese, but it's baloney.
Yeah.
Xi Jinping came to San Francisco earlier this month with one thing in mind, and it was to take Joe Biden's temperature. He had met him before. They had had a couple of phone calls at some of the worst moments of possible breakdown of diplomacy and relations. But I think that Xi Jinping came to San Francisco to see how this 81-year-old guy that he's heard so much about was actually functioning and how he would react to Xi and to China's demands. And so the very first thing that Xi's advance party said was, we want our president to be greeted by Americans on the streets.
Yeah.
And before we do that, we have to have you clean the streets of San Francisco, get rid of all those homeless people, get rid of all the people that are defecating on the streets of San Francisco. We'd like all the garbage removed, and there are people living in tents right on the streets. Please remove them from his site. And so we did. Okay, sure. Anything to make you happy. And that was the American response. And so then as Xi came in on his motorcade from the airport, he was greeted by masses of people waving flags. But here's the thing, Chinese flags. They said, we don't want any American flags visible. We don't want our leader to have to see an American flag on the way in. Okay. I mean, these were the city officials of San Francisco, which I think still qualifies as, an American city. Hard to tell. And so we immediately, and here's a Chinese term you'll like, kowtowed to him, and he got back to his residence. and was going to have a big dinner that night with CEOs from high tech companies. These are the same high tech companies that have all relocated their production facilities to China because it's cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And as he walked into the banquet, the CEOs gave him a standing ovation. That is just one step removed from them all falling to the ground onto their knees and singing Hosanna. So, what do you think Xi Jinping thought was going to happen when he says to Joe Biden, 81 years old and certainly in declining health, we don't have to attack with our military. We're just going to reunify Taiwan peacefully. And the leader of the free world did not respond, hey, buddy, I can see where you're headed with this. Don't even think about it. He said, well, we'll have to have further talks on this topic. So, you try to look at it in a sports metaphor. I mean, this was a walkover.
Mm.
And Xi Jinping certainly went back to his office in Beijing, certain that he had met a weaker opponent based on the disastrous retreat from Afghanistan that Biden ordered and oversaw, or misoversaw, if that's a word, on the complete failure to talk Vladimir Putin out of attacking Ukraine, out of the unfathomable return of billions and billions of dollars to Iran, which is still on path to destroy the United States. That is its purpose now. And the inability of Biden to talk any sense into either side in the Middle East war that's now going on. So, you look at somebody who is about 0 for 5, and you're bringing in an all-star team to play them, and you think, I like our chances. And I don't think I'm going to be giving in too much to this guy, because who knows how much longer he's going to be around.
Makes me think of, I'm from New England. I don't really care about sports. I'll watch them kind of as a token thing. I cared when I was younger. It was cool watching the Red Sox win. But the evil empire, Tom Brady, Bill Belichick, that was fun watching growing up. My dad and my brothers are nuts about it. But point is several years ago, it was one of the last Super Bowls Tom Brady wasn't the Falcons, because I did live in Atlanta for 15 years, and that was delicious seeing the greatest comeback ever, just really rub it in their face. I went to UGA. I have no allegiance there. I forget which team it was. It wasn't Atlanta, but I think it was the last Super Bowl Brady won with the Pats. That wasn't Atlanta. Point is beforehand, the coach of the opposing team actually went to the rival of the high school I went to in Atlanta, St. Pius. He went to Marist, so we were watching because he was like, cool, whatever. The point I'm getting to with all this meandering is he and Belichick go up before the game. They go shake hands, and they exchange whatever. And there's like a they're wearing mics so you can hear whatever, and whatever his name is. We'll call him John. We'll call him John Moody, right? He goes up to the younger guy and he's like John. He's like, hey, hey brother, happy to be here. We're the opponent. Like, let's play ball. And then the other guy will say it's you, and I'm Bill Belichick. He goes, oh, I grew up watching you. I'm such a big fan of you. I mean, you are the best. You're a legend. And my dad was watching that, and my dad goes, the game's over. Because Belichick smells blood in the water. It is. It's weakness. And to anyone that doesn't like that or thinks it's toxic masculinity, that is what runs the world. It just is what it is. It doesn't care about your opinion. No one cares whether or not you approve of the toxic masculinity of the Blitzkrieg or of Verdun in World War I. No one cares. Otto von Bismarck didn't care. China does not care. We can have our whole idea of like, well, we can be a peaceful world, and John Lennon, we can lay in bed and do a sit-in for until the war's over. The reality is the lives we live are provided for by an overwhelming force, and even more hip than to hate the United States is to hate the United States military. Everyone gets real quiet when Russia invades Ukraine and we're able to fund them. And then when Hamas attacks Israel and we're able to throw 2 carrier groups over there and still have 11 left over. Everyone gets real quiet and stops complaining about the US being the world's police. But even then, you're seeing under Joe Biden a lack of an overwhelming force. You see what happens. You see it in households without a father figure. You see that, right? I have 3 brothers. Yeah, we'd start to revolt against my mom, and she could discipline us so much until finally my dad would come home, and then it was like DEFCON 1. But I look back at that and thank God I had that. It made me it led to me like not getting arrested in college. I understood power. I was like, hey man, it is what it is. There is no we all shake hands and sing kumbaya. There is force. There is overwhelming force, and God willing, you don't have to use it. But we're not showing that. We're not showing that at all. And more people will die in our feeble attempts to show peace than, ironically, vice versa. If you show teeth, less people will die. So excuse that rant. I get a little jacked up sometimes, but
No, it's fine. Look, I mean, China assesses the situations that it sees in front of it. And historically, when a foreign leader is in the presence of a United States president, it is with respect. It might not always be with agreement, but it is with respect. And I fear that very few foreign leaders either fear or respect the current president. And that's why next year's election, I think, is going to have greater international impact than we're thinking about right now. Right now, it's all about Republicans, Democrats, Biden, Trump. It's and America, of course, because we've been so successful, and because we've been a mostly stable republic. Of course, there was a civil war, but mostly a stable republic. We've gotten used to it, and we just assume that nothing bad can happen because, hey, after all, our government will protect us. And as you say, we are looking at the possibility of overwhelming force. China, Russia, Iran, and other nations that wish us ill are talking. I don't know that they have a battle plan, but they are talking and they are assessing their common enemy. And they are finding that common enemy weak and winnable. And I think that while all these people are out with, of course, they're all wearing masks or hoods to protect themselves from being identified. And as they go out there and say from the river to the sea, why are they wearing masks? I mean, it's not to prevent COVID. It's because they're ashamed. It's because they don't want to be identified. It's because they think that mask protects them from legal repercussions or from any kind of responsibility for what they do or say. Therefore, throwing a rock through a window, torching a police car, trashing an entire city block, beating up people that they think might be Jews, let alone those who are. These are all okay as long as you're wearing a mask and nobody can say, hey, that was so-and-so doing that. It's the sense of inevitability, which is I get to do whatever I want for the next 3 hours on the streets. And the news coverage will say pro-Palestinian supporters. No, these are punks. These are cheapniks. These are thieves by day and cowards by night. And that's the basis of the hate America from the river to the sea stuff that's going on, and which, and I hope we can get into this, which our mainstream news media refuses to call what it is. They're very happy to call Trump a criminal and a this and a that, because that's cool. That's cool. But they won't take a look at who is breaking the windows, who is beating up Jews, who is showing the rest of the world that we tolerate any kind of criminal behavior as long as it's cool.
If you were to if you were to take a standardized test and they change the names, and you read a book or something, I've had the privilege of meeting a lot of these guys where they write books where legally like the Pentagon has to look over it, and so all the names and places are changed and stuff. So if you're reading about like a woman dictator in Mexico, chances are you're reading about like a guy in Iraq or something. If you just changed all of that, if you just threw all of that out, no Republican this, Biden that, MAGA, whatever. If you just had a book and all the names were changed, and you didn't know which was which, and you heard about a group of people who were accusing one side of being Nazis for 4 years, and then without questioning approved, and hey, I've interviewed Ukrainian refugees, my heart goes out to them, but there's no denying a major faction of that power group are neo-Nazis. Okay, if that same group then shamed Israel for retaliating against an attack on October 7th, which proportionally was the equivalent of 11 9/11s in terms of populations, which one would you say were Nazis? Nazi punks at best, Nazis at worst, terrorists most likely. But like you said, no one wants to call it what it is. I'm a conservative. I'm a white guy with blue eyes. I've been called a Nazi for more. One of my closest friends is Jewish. Two of my best friends in college are like I don't. But then to openly attack the literal nation of Jews for retaliating against an attack on them, it's you can't call it what it is. I can, which is why I'm relegated to Rumble and not on YouTube or mainstream media, but it is what it is. And as much as you want to call it this, that, or the other thing, it just is what it is. These are terrorists. These are anti-Semites. These are anti-American communists. They want nothing but chaos. They hate all that is good and pure in the world. But you can't say that because it makes you a radical and you can't sell ads that way. But that's what it is. That if I don't mind saying this because I'll look into the camera and you can find 1,380 other episodes of me saying it. Me, Thomas Carrigan. I don't put on a mask. It's because I'm not ashamed of what I'm saying. And you said you wanted to get into it, so please touch on it more. Why won't they go into it? Is it as simple as follow the money?
Oh, yeah. Um, Look,
That
I
was quite a
was
sigh.
I was in the news business, which I no longer call that by that name. I call it the information industry, um, for about 45 years. And I can still recall being a 22 or 3-year old and walking into my first professional newsroom. And I was in awe. I was in awe of what was right in front of me there. It was a bunch of people, none of whom very well dressed, and certainly none of them particularly handsome or pretty, but they were busy at their work. And they were doing that work with a kind of concentration that disallowed any kind of craziness or acting up, or worst of all, inserting your own opinions into the things that you were writing about. Um, During my time at Fox, I was sort of in a position of authority, and I would have people, mostly younger, almost everybody's younger than me, come up to me and say, what is our job as journalists? And I can remember one particular incident in my office, and it was uh, a new employee, and I think quite an idealistic employee, who said, what is our job as journalists? And I said, your job as a journalist is to bring to the public what you have seen with your own eyes and know to be true, and what you have heard and been told by people who know what they're talking about and are responsible sources of information, and in whom you have learned to have trust. And your job is not to save the world. It is not to make the world a better place. It is not to help poor people become better off. None of those things are your job. Your job is to present truth and facts. Now, truth has become another one of those, debatable words, and it has been misused about as often as racism is used now. But there is a difference between saying, I was on the street and I saw a crash between two cars, and here's what I saw happen. Now, either you're under the influence of something, or you made this up, or you knew the people involved in the crash and you wanted to make one of them look good and one of them look bad. Those are all possibilities. But for the most part, and I'm just using a car accident as an easy example, if you saw it and you're telling your version of what you saw and you believe that you've gotten all your facts right, then you're a reporter. If you instead want to say, I saw this car and it was being driven by a white man, and I know that they're not, and therefore I think it was the other car and I'm going to blame the guy, the white man that was driving that car, because it was, because he's white. What credibility do you have? So sadly, the American news media, I don't know how it started. I guess when big companies started to take over news operations, because news is expensive. Yeah. News is expensive to do. You have to pay people. They have to go places. You have to give them tickets to go those places. You have to get them into events. You have to let them. There are costs involved. And then, worst of all, they say, gee, I'd also like 2 weeks of vacation a year. Oh, but that's how it goes. And so as the costs of creating and delivering news rose exponentially, big companies came in and said, you know what? We're pretty good at bottom lines. We can take this thing over and we can cut costs pretty dramatically, and we'll still have the glory, the great reputation of ABC, NBC, CBS, it's whoever they want it to be. And we can still do it and still make a profit. I'm not against profits. I'm certainly not against capitalism. It's done very well by me and I buy it. But that was the beginning of a new kind of measurement of your success as a journalist. Is your company making money? The next phase of it is much more recent. And that is when the internet began gauging success by how many hits you got on your article. How many people wanted to see it? They might not read the whole thing. They might have only read the headline. But hey, that doesn't matter. It doesn't matter if I know what I'm talking about, as long as I saw that thing. And once hits and engagement and responses, etc., once they became the new batting average of journalism, we all went down a whole lot in reputation, in pride, in honor, and in the importance of what that used to be. So that's what I think happened. I think we also got to a point where each of the major political parties, Republicans and Democrats, began to think that governing was all-out warfare. You either won or you lost. And there was nothing like compromise. There was nothing like, what do you need to make this thing acceptable to you and your fellow party members? All right, let's see if we can do a deal here. It's not an under-the-table deal, a very open deal. You want oil drilling rights, and we want ecological protections. All right, let's see now. Well, how can we adjust these things so that both sides can say to their constituents, I did a good thing today. No, it has to be, did I drive my enemy into the ground and then step on his or her face? That's become the new political win. And people recognize that. And especially these people that you described very, very well, as hating America, running out there with their faces covered up, shouting the foulest things they can imagine because they might get on TV. If I really use a lot of bad words and say a lot of things and say death to Israel and say this, I might get on TV or on the internet. And that's just giving up. That's giving up on America and on what it was founded on and what it's supposed to be.
That was beautiful. And as a side note, I can say your rant was much more eloquent and measured than mine. I start to get a little crazy look in my eye, and every once in a while I have to hear. I'm like, bring it down, Tommy. It's not starts, not slow it down.
Eloquent, but a rant nonetheless.
Hey, rants are what it's for, man. Rants are why we're doing the podcast. Rants are why mainstream media is dying. Because if this was, as you know, if this was mainstream media, it'd be you have me read the synopsis, and then you'd have 45 seconds to tell me why China is evil and why Joe Biden is a communist, and then gone. There'd be no meandering us talking about this and that and getting into things. And maybe that is kind of the next step we take this. It seems to have been one of the, I don't know why I remember it because I wasn't even really that interested in it, but I remember taking mass communication in college and I remember reading about Marshall McLuhan and the global village. But one of the things I always took away was the media consolidation, right? Everyone knows the six major companies, and I could name them, but I know it was six major companies. And that seems to probably be an inevitability, right? And that's not unique to news. It seems to just be that the capitalist sort of mega corporation, right? The defense contractors eat each other up, the big box stores eat each other up, Google eats up the little competitors. It just is the free market, right? And you got to take the good with the bad. But it also means that innovation will arise in a system and it's not centrally planned. There isn't some grand wizard at the center of the Politburo saying, and now we will have podcasts. Well, eventually, when you get something that is, like you said, your opinion inserted, no one wants to hear that. They want to see the. I had on yesterday. I've had him on a couple times. Ray McGovern. He was in the CIA for 20 years, provided national security briefs to Reagan, and he said you have to completely remove your opinion, your emotions, and then the hardest of all, morality. And you have to look at it surgically. And you say, this shipping container full of these missiles is here, this gas is here, and this mass grave is there. And you provide the intelligence. That's it. You have to remove yourself from it. So once they start removing themselves from it, and then you pair that with the six major companies and the consolidation, kind of all the money flowing upwards into massive black holes of which they'll never escape, that will dominate for a while, and it did. But they will grow stale. The king will grow fat and old and forget what it's like to fight. And you're gonna have things. There's a reason why. You'd love him or hate him. I like him because I started listening out to him right when he started. There's a reason why people like Joe Rogan, a UFC guy covered in tattoos, has what, like 90 million, 100 million downloads a month. There's a reason why. And it's not because everyone likes his tattoos or UFC. I hate UFC. I don't care about it. The current system is dying. And you can only go so far with that before you turn on Fox and they go, this is what happened. This is what happened. You turn on CNN, they go, no, this is what happened. This is what happened. You're finally watching. And you're like, I just want to know what happened. And people have an inner magnetic kind of compass that pulls you towards the truth. You can squash it down all you want, but there's a core thread that people will go to, and it's going to take time. It moves glacially, but it is what we're seeing now. They've been They've been putting out a crap product, is what it is. You've been putting out a crap product. It's an iPhone, and you go, this isn't updated from the last one. What is this? And then some other company, it's like they're a startup and they're not quite as squeaky clean, but they're innovating. They're doing crazy stuff. And you're like, that's the next thing. And I mean, because I believe in the free market, I don't believe in any government intervention in that. There's only one thing to do, and it's to let the dinosaur die and let the next thing take over. It just is what it is.
Well, that's pretty eloquent itself. So I guess we're tied in the fourth. There's one other topic that I'd just like to toss
Sure.
around for a little bit, and it's certainly one of the main topics of my last book, um, and that's artificial intelligence and what it means. It's such a pretty name, isn't it? Artificial intelligence, and you just think, well, there can't be anything bad about that.
The Jetsons.
Uh, and first machine. I mean, look, a calculator. We used to have calculator. Well, we used to have abacuses, but then you'd get a calculator and you stop doing subtraction yourself. You just and it gave you the answer, and that was the beginning. Um, that was the beginning of a downward slope, and now we have creations. I don't know if machines is a good enough word. That's sort of an insult to machines, but creations that talk to us and mimic our voices or mimic the voice of someone that we admire and tell you that not only are they immensely smarter than you and faster than you and more capable than you, but please leave your wife and be with me. I love you. Do you love me? That's what really happened. That Chat GPT
Mm-hmm.
thing that the New York Times columnist wrote about, Kevin Roose, I think is his name, and he was terrified. He was horrified at what was going on there because this was a sponsored interaction between him and Chat GPT that OpenAI, which I think is the developer of Chat GPT, invited him to, and it got way out of control, far out of the control that OpenAI expected to have. But he wrote about it, and I think we had a huge reaction that, wait a minute, this isn't artificial intelligence. This is an enemy. This is a very powerful enemy of immense intelligence, but is it going to be used for good or evil? And we haven't gotten our hands around that yet. And again, I try to dissect it a little bit and show what might happen if the chatbots just decide not to hand over control again and decide that they're better qualified to run the world than we are. We haven't thought about that because we assume, ASSUME, we all know the old adage. We assume that it's safe because it has a cool name and it's out there on the market and we can either get it or download it or whatever. Why would anybody let us download something that's going to hurt us? Well, ask yourself if they care whether it hurts you or not. Artificial intelligence is the looming serpent that is curling itself around us, not terribly slowly and not terribly subtly. And yet we use it and approve it and it's cool. And we say, hey, nothing's ever going to get to me. I mean, after all, I hate America. I'm on the good side here. So I'll use artificial intelligence to help me hate America if I have to, or if I feel like it. It's lack of awareness that the world out there is not full of peace, love, and brotherhood. And so I think that we're leading ourselves down a path to destruction if we don't take very seriously what can happen when we allow machines to tell us what to do.
There's there's an image I saw years ago, and it's On the left-hand column it says 1964, and then it says, present day. I think it was 2017 at the time. And it shows like an old cathode tube, ray tube TV, like the big box, like a wooden TV, and then a plasma 4K OLED on the right. And then on the left, it has like a rotary phone, and on the right, it had the newest iPhone. And it's just going back between 1964 and 2017. On the left, it has a car, like a steering wheel, the steering column that would impale you and didn't have shatterproof glass. And on the right, it was like a brand new Tesla with a touchscreen, and it's just showing the comparison of the jump of technology. And then finally, on the left, it shows 1964, the SR-71 Blackbird, which existed at the same time as all that other stuff. The plane that could fly at Mach 3.2 was made of titanium, stretched 10 inches, flies at 80,000 feet. Insane. And then on the right, there's just a question mark. What exists today? Now, granted, that's aircraft. That's Lockheed Martin Skunk Works, probably some hypersonic bomber. I don't know, whatever, stealth bomber. You have to imagine on the left, and mind you, the SR-71 existed at the time as all of that, but no one that was using all that other stuff knew about the SR-71. Sure, some government officials did, but no one else knew. Doesn't mean it didn't exist at the exact same time as those old TVs and phones. Okay. So right now, you could go one step further. You could say 2023 on the left, ChatGPT. Now, that's pretty impressive. On the right. So what exists right now that we think we know of? We think we know of ChatGPT. What monstrosity has already been created in some underground bunker at some computer lab, Sandia or Oak Ridge, Tennessee, or DARPA or DTRO or whatever the Department of Energy? What's really going on? I mean, it's the race to the bottom, right? I've used this quote so many times in this podcast, but it's when all the scientists who made the atomic bomb met with Truman and said that we have an idea for something called the hydrogen bomb. It's 1,000 times stronger. We're going to call it the evil thing. The meeting lasted 7 minutes because Harry Truman said, "Can the Soviets do it?" And they said, "Not yet, but they'll be able to." And they said, "Well, then we got to do it first." I can only imagine there's been some talk, you know, should we plug in the quantum computer to the hyper aware AI and be like, I don't want to. It's an evil thing. Can the Chinese do it? Not yet, sir, but soon. And then then we have to do it. Man, I can't help but feel the major world powers are probably already being run by AI that probably don't have to, if it really didn't want to, probably don't have to take commands from a general. I would hope that they're in some Faraday cage under a mountain with a nuke pre-planted in it so you could kill it. But
let's use your example of the what's on the left and what's on the right,
yeah.
and how things have moved, how things have developed. And let's take two examples. Let's take Kristallnacht in 1938,
Mm-hmm.
when the campaign against the Jews really began with the Nazis, kill the Jews, etc. And then let's look at 2023, kill the Jews. We love Palestine. Jews are
Mm-hmm.
filth. So maybe not so much development as we thought. I do think that your scenario of competing world powers, looking at the development of AI and how it can be used, especially for warfare, is very apt. And so I'll just do one more left-right comparison, not political left-right, just
Yeah,
left
the
and
the cooler
as
one,
in hands.
the diagram.
And thinking about John Kennedy in the White House when the Soviets had installed missiles in Cuba, and the agonizing thoughts that must have gone through his mind and the mind of the people around him when he had to decide whether he was going to use nuclear bombs to eradicate that threat. And the questions that leaders now around the world are probably grappling with. The difference being that I don't think Putin, I don't think Xi Jinping, I don't think the leaders, the mullahs in Iran really care that much about what they'd be unleashing. They don't care about their own people, and they certainly don't care about the people in other countries that would be killed by the use of nuclear power. And so it's there's a lot of development and there's a lot of changes, but not all of them are good.
Mm. Oh yeah, no, make no mistake. I didn't take away from that chart that it's all good, nor did I take away human development. If you put a humans on the left and the right, you'd be like, yeah, 1960s burning American flag, saying we're the great Satan. 2023 burning American flag, say no. That's I have no hope for that. I'm talking purely about technology. Yeah, I can't help but think that that's what's going on, and it's it's gonna come to you. It's gonna come to you as, like you said, the serpent. It's gonna be the snake. It's not gonna be a marching army that you're like, there's the evil thing. No, it's gonna be beautiful artwork that you just put in a prompt and it just creates it instantly. Music immediately. Frank Sinatra rapping to Eminem, just boop, and it's cool. It's fun. But yeah, I mean, how long until it's, you don't need your wife. All those flaws. She's always nagging you. What about me? I'm perfect. And it's like we are very rapidly approaching an event horizon of and who knows, maybe if you zoom out far enough, this is the next step. Maybe there was a you and a me 100,000 years ago going, you guys, you other monkeys, you guys stand up straight, you start using your thumbs, you're gonna forget what it means to be an orangutan. And then they do, and they go create the wheel and whatever you want. And then it's you guys start being farmers instead of hunter gatherers. Like, next thing you know, you're going to be writing stuff down and making money, and on and on and on. Maybe this is just the next step. Maybe you and I are outdated, and maybe we are, to quote Marshall McLuhan, human beings are the sex organs of the machine world. We are bringing it into reality, much like a cocoon. I don't, that's above my pay grade, but I mean, you have to wonder, is this just, if you
Well,
if
yeah, Tommy, on that optimistic, happy note, um, I might, I might, I might have to ask you to have me back on again because this has been fascinating.
yeah,
And I've really enjoyed the mutual ranting.
yeah, absolutely, man. Yeah, no, we're coming over. Actually, it's exactly 10:59, so we'll wrap it up. I am gonna send you an email. I'm not just kissing your butt. I would legitimately like to have you on for the. I'm not. This is the beauty of being my own boss, is I don't have to be nice to anybody. If I didn't want to read your book, I'd say, hey guys, go in the description, find his book. I want to read it. I think I've probably only read the synopsis once or twice for someone before. It looks fascinating. It's right up my alley, and I think, as you can tell by this podcast, I'm not lying. This is right up my alley. For better or worse. But yeah, dude. Thank you so much for your time. It was a pleasure talking to you, man. And I would say your eloquence won. I still have a lot of polishing to do. I have a very uncharacteristic of me. I didn't drop a single swear this podcast. I kept my professional face on. I know when to
Oh,
button it up. I know when to meet the parents. So
well, thank you. Just remember, polish is a very slippery substance. It can go one way or the other. So,
yeah, I like that. I like that. Um, Yeah, man. Thank you so much. Total
thank
pleasure
you.
having you on here. Guys, please go into the description. Please go grab the book on Amazon. And yeah, I'll send this link, and I would love to schedule another one, man. I would love to do it.
Thank you, man. Bye
Thank you
bye.
so much. You have a wonderful day. Guys, thank you so much for watching. God bless America. It is worth fighting for.